The Cat Lady. Once upon a time, there was a young housemaid called Cressida Claw. She worked at the fine houses in the big squares of the bustling city of Harbour Heights. Unfortunately, Cressida wasn't a very good housemaid. She was slovenly, bad-tempered, and quite lazy, which meant she never stayed in one job for more than a month or two at a time. Before long, she had worked all over Harbour Heights, and had got to know its squares and streets, alleyways and lanes extremely well, not to mention the houses, great and small, that lined them. Cressida hated being a housemaid, and resented having to sweep and clean and wash dishes and beat carpets. She hated all housework, and the people she had to clear up after, with all their messy clutter and untidiness. In fact, there was only one thing that Cressida Claw actually liked about being a housemaid, and that was this. She loved the opportunity it gave her for snooping. Whenever the coast was clear, Cressida would lay down her mop or feather duster and start going through the belongings of the people she was supposed to be cleaning for. Cupboards, wardrobes, drawers and dressing tables, nothing escaped Cressida Claw's nimble fingers or gimlet eyes. She would search through the pockets of overcoats hanging in the hall and sift through the waste paper baskets. Sometimes she would even rummage in the dustbins in the back alleys. You see, what Cressida had discovered during her years as a housemaid in Harbour Heights is that you can never tell what you might find if you have a good snoop. Of course, the only trouble with snooping is that you could get caught. Cressida Claw was pretty good at snooping, but she got caught more often than she'd have liked, which, since people didn't like snoopers, meant she kept losing her job. But Cressida didn't mind too much, and she certainly learnt some interesting things along the way, such as what to keep and what to leave when snooping. Taking money or valuable jewellery usually led to trouble because they were bound to be missed. But anything that looked forgotten or was likely to seem as if it had been lost was fine. So Cressida took a lot of odd coins left in overcoat pockets and single earrings from jewellery boxes. But the best thing of all to take when snooping, she soon discovered, were things that seemed the least valuable to the untrained eye, such as letters, scribbled notes, address books, laundry lists, reports and accounts of all kinds, anything, in fact, that might contain information. Cressida soon found out that information was extremely valuable. People would pay for information. So that's what Cressida Claw sold. She sold holiday dates to burglars, shopping lists to tradesmen, address books to insurance salesmen and confidence tricksters, and embarrassing love letters back to their owners. Unfortunately, Cressida soon acquired an extremely bad reputation as a housemaid, not only because she was very bad at housework, but because trouble seemed to follow her around. Finally, she found that she couldn't get a job anywhere. Now, when Cressida had been unemployed in the past, she had spent a lot of her spare time snooping in the dustbins in the alleys behind the large squares, and it was there that she had made some unlikely friends. These were the scruffy yellow alley cats who lived there. They took to following her about and going through the bins for her, for fish heads and half-empty tin cans. Cressida grew to love them for their crafty ways and ability to sneak silently into those nooks and crannies that she could never reach. So when Cressida Claw found herself permanently out of work, she spent all her time with her beloved cats, and slowly, bit by bit, she began to train them. Chapter 7. Harbour Heights Nautical Savings Bank, 27, Magdalen Walk, Harbour Heights. Re. Neptune's Nautical Antiques. Dear Miss Neptune and Miss Neptune, regrettably it appears that your account with us is completely without funds, and we are therefore unable to lend you the sum you required. Yours sincerely, Lionel D. Pecksmith, Deputy Manager. As the large silver moon rose above Firefly Square, all was quiet in the streets and gardens below. Apart from the lights that were still shining in Evisham's workshop, all the other shops on the south side were in darkness and had been for hours. The shuttered windows of the Institute were similarly dark. This wasn't unusual. In fact, it was only when the Firefly Quarterly magazine was being printed that the windows of the Institute blazed through the night, and that, for obvious reasons, was only 4 times a year. A more regular occurrence, yet one which scarcely a soul ever noticed, was taking place at that very moment on the roof of the Institute, however. Lines of small, furry figures were emerging from the chimney pots and padding silently across the tiles, the moonlight glistening on their sooty heads. Soon, on 3 sides of Firefly Square, the rooftops of the Institute were crowded with the little creatures. They jostled silently with each other, like seals on a crowded beach, as each found a place on the silvery roof tiles and lay down. Then, one after the other, in a curious ripple effect, they raised their large, furry feet in the air and gently wiggled their toes at the moon. A short while later, Elliot DeMille, director of the Institute, appeared at the top of the iron fire escape and stepped onto the roof. Ignoring the creatures that were lying on the slope of the roof behind him, the director strode to the edge of the low perimeter wall that ran the length of the Institute's frontage and waited. Several minutes passed, and behind the director, who was dressed in patent leather mules and a monogrammed silk dressing gown, the creatures continued to wiggle their toes, humming contentedly as they did so. Suddenly, losing patience, Elliot DeMille spun round. "That's enough feet cooling," he hissed. "Back down the chimneys with you, now!" The small creatures sat up and, in a spreading ripple, climbed to their feet. Then slowly and reluctantly they shuffled off towards the chimneys. One by one they pulled themselves up onto the rims and disappeared into the chimney pots in quiet, sooty ploffs. Ploff, ploff, ploff. Before long, the rooftops of the Institute were deserted once more, and the chimneys were gently smoking with faint spirals of disturbed soot. Elliot DeMille was alone at last. He leaned over the low perimeter wall and searched the night sky. Then, suddenly, they began to arrive. First one, then 2, then in a flock, 10 pigeons that circled low over the director's head and came to land on the low wall. Elliot DeMille dug into the top pocket of his silk robe and pulled out a handful of birdseed, which he trickled along the wall. The pigeons began pecking greedily at the seed. Then, one after the other, Elliot grasped each plump pigeon in a bony hand and gently pulled a small capsule from the leg. He slipped the capsules into his right-hand pocket and released its feathered carrier. When he had done this to the 10th pigeon, he shooed them all off the wall, and they flapped away over the burnished rooftops and into the dark black night. Before turning to go, Elliot smiled his thin smile and patted the top pocket of his monogrammed dressing gown. "Thank you, Miss Claw," he whispered, after the departing pigeons. "You never let me down."